You see him there, a small, matted ball of fur, tucked tight against the cold, damp bricks of a forgotten alleyway. His ribs show through thin, patchy fur, a testament to endless empty bellies and forgotten meals. His eyes, though, are what truly catch you. A startling mix of weary resignation and an ember of defiant hope, reflecting the flickering neon sign of the diner across the street. This isn't just any stray dog. This is Scrappy, a creature who has known nothing but hardship, yet carries a resilience that you won't believe. His story is about to unfold, a testament to the fact that even the smallest, most overlooked among us can possess the heart of a hero. Before you dive into the story, hit like and subscribe if you love dogs, and tell us in the comments what makes your furry friend special, or a favorite dog story that touched your heart. The city, with its ceaseless roar and indifferent pace, had been Scrappy's world since he was a pup. He was born into the concrete jungle, a tiny, shivering life amidst the towering shadows of skyscrapers and constant, overwhelming scents. His mother, a weary veteran of countless harsh winters, had done her best, but the streets were a ruthless teacher. Scrappy learned early that scraps were scarce, kindness scarcer, and every day was a fight for survival. He was often seen, a blur of motion, darting through the bustling marketplace, a flash of brown fur snatching a dropped morsel before vanishing into the labyrinthine alleys. It was a dog-eat-dog world, quite literally, and Scrappy, despite his small stature, was a master of evasion and opportunistic foraging. He knew the rhythm of the city's waste disposal, the quiet back doors where sympathetic chefs sometimes left out a bone or two, and the precise moment when a hurried pedestrian might drop a piece of their lunch. It was a miserable existence, sure, but he was alive, and for Scrappy, that was enough. He'd developed an almost supernatural sense for danger, a keen awareness of every shuffling footstep, every sudden movement. This isn't just a metaphor. Dogs, with their incredible sense of smell and hearing, can pick up on subtle cues that humans completely miss, like changes in human heart rates or even the scent of fear. Scrappy's survival instincts were honed to a razor's edge. One particularly frigid morning, a piercing siren wailed, echoing off the buildings. Most people simply flinched and continued their hurried commutes, but Scrappy, tucked beneath an overflowing dumpster, instinctively pressed himself further into the grime. He knew that sound often meant chaos, and chaos meant unpredictable danger for a small, defenseless creature like him. Moments later, a fire truck roared past, its air horn rattling the very foundations of the street. Scrappy merely blinked, his small body trembling slightly, but he remained still until the danger had passed. One might almost think he was judging their driving. Honestly, buddy, if you're going to rush, at least do it with some finesse, he might have scoffed, if dogs could scoff. His days were a monotonous loop of scavenging, avoiding bigger, meaner dogs, and finding the warmest, driest spot to curl up for a few hours of uneasy sleep. He'd learned to distinguish the hurried footsteps of indifferent commuters from the slower, more deliberate steps of those who might offer a kick or a kind word. Mostly, it was indifference. Occasionally, though, a small hand, belonging to a child, would reach out with a piece of discarded bread, or a gentle voice would murmur a word of pity. These moments were rare, fleeting sparks in the bleak landscape of his existence. One remembers the way his eyes looked, that mix of hope and weariness. It was in those rare moments of human connection that the hope flickered brightest, a tiny flame refusing to be extinguished by the harsh winds of neglect. He carried no bitterness, only a simple, profound desire for warmth, for food, for a place to truly rest without the constant threat of the street. Will such simple hopes ever be truly fulfilled in a world so vast and often uncaring? One evening, as the city lights began to paint the sky in hues of orange and purple, Scrappy found himself drawn to the alley behind Henderson's hardware. a cluttered, perpetually dusty establishment run by an equally dusty man named Mr. Henderson. Mr. Henderson was a creature of habit, and his habits included leaving his back door slightly ajar while he tidied up before closing. Scrappy, driven by the persistent gnawing in his stomach, had been observing this ritual for days. Tonight, the scent of something promising, perhaps a dropped sandwich crust or even a discarded half of a donut, wafted tantalizingly from the doorway. He crept closer, his small frame almost invisible in the deepening shadows. His tail giving the faintest, almost imperceptible twitch. This was his chance, a little gamble against the odds. The alley behind Henderson's hardware was Scrappy's unofficial office, his daily beat. He was often found there, a tiny four-legged shadow flitting between overflowing bins and stacks of discarded lumber. It was a gold mine for a determined scavenger, offering everything from half-eaten hot dogs, a rare treat, to the occasional, surprisingly comfortable, flattened cardboard box. He had a mental map of every loose brick, every leaky pipe, and every patch of sunlight that managed to pierce the urban canopy. He knew which dumpster offered the best chance of finding a treasure, like that one time he unearthed a perfectly good, albeit slightly chewed, squeaky toy. He didn't really know what it was for, but it felt nice to gnaw on, and it made a funny sound. Ah, the simple joys of a street dog, one might chuckle, picturing him batting it around. His survival tactics were a masterclass in urban stealth. He'd learned to flatten himself against walls, mimicking the grime, becoming almost invisible to the hurried human eye. He moved with a liquid grace, a ghost in the periphery, able to slip through gaps one wouldn't think possible. His ears, perpetually swiveling, caught every distant siren, every approaching footfall, every whispered argument from the apartments above. He understood the nuances of human behavior better than most humans understood themselves. A brisk, even pace usually meant indifference. A slow, shuffling gait, however, could mean anything from an elderly person who might drop something to a drunkard who might be a danger. Scrappy had an uncanny ability to judge intent, a crucial skill for a creature living on the fringes. It's truly amazing how animals, especially those without human guidance, develop such acute sensory awareness and problem-solving skills to navigate challenging environments. One might even say he had a degree in streetology, with a minor in human observation. His ongoing unspoken feud was with Mr. Henderson himself. Mr. Henderson was a man built of sharp angles and grumbled words, his face perpetually set in a grimace that seemed carved from years of dealing with faulty plumbing and demanding customers. He wore a stained apron that had clearly seen more hardware than 100 Home Depots, and his glasses perched precariously on the end of his nose, perpetually sliding down. He had a particular disdain for alley dwellers, especially the four-legged variety. "Shoo! Go on now!" he'd bark, brandishing a broom like a knight's lance whenever he spotted Scrappy. One would think the broom was his most prized possession, given how vigorously he wielded it. Scrappy, being the astute observer he was, knew it was mostly bluster. Mr. Henderson never actually swung the broom, just waved it menacingly. It was all part of their routine, a daily dance of chase and evasion. Scrappy, for his part, found Mr. Henderson faintly amusing. The man huffed and puffed, but he never actually hurt him. Plus, sometimes, after a particularly spirited shooing, Scrappy would notice a strategically misplaced piece of bread near the back door, almost as if it had accidentally fallen from Mr. Henderson's pocket. Scrappy played along, of course, darting away dramatically, only to loop back moments later to snatch the offering. It was a silent agreement, a begrudging truce. Ah, the theatrical flair of a street performer, Scrappy might have thought, munching on his prize. He knew the drill. Mr. Henderson needed to maintain his grumpy facade, and Scrappy needed to eat. Everyone wins. One afternoon, a delivery truck, far too large for the narrow alley, attempted a precarious maneuver, backing up towards Henderson's loading dock. The driver, red-faced, and flustered, misjudged the distance, and the back of the truck scraped loudly against the brick wall of the hardware store. Bricks crumbled, dust billowed, and a section of the old, rotting wooden awning above the back door groaned ominously. Mr. Henderson, alerted by the cacophony, rushed out, broom in hand, ready to unleash a torrent of grumbles. He began to berate the driver, pointing emphatically at the damage, entirely oblivious to the growing crack in the old timber above his head. One could practically see the thought bubble over his head. "My beautiful, antiquated awning, how dare you!" Scrappy, who had been dozing in a patch of sun nearby, instantly picked up on the subtle shift in the air, the faint groan of stressed wood that was imperceptible to human ears over the shouting. A dog's hearing is incredibly sensitive, allowing them to detect sounds at much higher frequencies than humans, and also hear sounds from much greater distances. He lifted his head, his ears swiveling, pinpointing the source of the subtle, unsettling vibration. He saw the widening crack, the slow, agonizing sag of the old wood. He looked at Mr. Henderson, who was still mid-rant, his back to the impending collapse. A strange, urgent instinct surged through Scrappy. It wasn't about food or survival for himself. It was something deeper, a spark of connection, perhaps, or just the innate desire to warn. Will this unexpected twist change the dynamic between the man and the mutt forever? The air crackled with a tension that only Scrappy seemed to register. One could almost hear his internal monologue. "Seriously, pal? Now's not the time for your grand theatrical performance about a scraped wall. Look up." Mr. Henderson, oblivious in his righteous indignation, continued to lecture the bewildered delivery driver. The old wooden awning groaned louder, a desperate plea for attention. Scrappy's hackles rose, a primal warning system screaming within him. He had to do something, anything, to break through Mr. Henderson's singular focus on the damaged brickwork. His finely tuned hearing picked up the splintering sound, distinct from the ongoing argument. Dogs have an incredible ability to pinpoint the source of a sound, far better than humans, using minute differences in the time it takes for a sound wave to reach each ear. This wasn't just instinct. It was a desperate, split-second calculation by a creature often dismissed as just a stray. With a sudden burst of energy, Scrappy launched himself forward, not at the delivery driver, nor at the offending truck. His target was Mr. Henderson's leg. He wasn't aiming to bite, merely to startle, to create a disruption. He nudged hard, a surprising force from such a small body, then barked, a sharp, urgent sound that cut through the alley's noise. It wasn't his usual "please give me food" bark. This was a "danger, you fool" bark. Mr. Henderson, mid-sentence about the unacceptable gouge, stumbled forward, losing his balance. His glasses, as if on cue, slid off his nose and clattered to the ground. "Confound it, mutt!" he bellowed, more surprised than angry, as he instinctively reached down to steady himself and then to retrieve his spectacles. In that precise moment, with Mr. Henderson momentarily off balance and looking down, the entire section of the wooden awning gave way with a deafening crack. Old, rotted timber, bricks, and a cascade of dust rained down precisely where Mr. Henderson had been standing moments before. A thick wooden beam, heavy and jagged, crashed onto the spot, splintering the pavement. If Scrappy hadn't bumped him, Mr. Henderson would have been directly underneath it. The delivery driver gasped, his face ashen, finally understanding the true danger that had just been averted. One might even say Scrappy had a knack for dramatic timing. "See, I told you I was good at leading you," he might have thought with a satisfied pant. Silence descended on the alley, thick and heavy, broken only by the settling dust and the rapid thumping of Mr. Henderson's heart. He stood frozen, one hand still reaching for his glasses, the other pressed against his chest. He stared at the splintered wood, then at Scrappy, who stood a few feet away, tail wagging ever so slightly, as if to say, "You're welcome." The dog's eyes held that same hopeful glint one had seen before, now mixed with a hint of what could only be described as pride. It was a unique, emotional moment, seeing the hardened old shopkeeper, utterly stunned, and the humble stray, brimming with quiet satisfaction. Mr. Henderson slowly bent down, retrieving his glasses, his hands trembling. He looked at Scrappy again, really looked at him, perhaps, for the first time. The scruffy mutt, the perpetual nuisance, had just saved his life. The delivery driver, recovering his composure, spoke first. "Good heavens, Mr. Henderson! That dog! He saved you! I saw it! He pushed you out of the way!" Mr. Henderson, still processing the near disaster, merely nodded, a strange, dazed expression on his face. He looked at Scrappy, who sat patiently, observing him with an almost regal air. It was clear that Scrappy hadn't acted out of malice or mischief. It was an intentional warning, a desperate measure that had worked. Dogs possess an incredible capacity for empathy and protection towards humans they interact with, even those who have previously shown them little kindness. Their loyalty is often unconditional, a profound testament to their nature. Mr. Henderson slowly extended a hand, not with a broom, but with an open palm. Scrappy, cautious but curious, approached hesitantly, sniffing the outstretched fingers. Then, he licked them, a soft, warm touch that broke through Mr. Henderson's shell. A small, almost imperceptible smile touched the old man's lips. It was a smile that hadn't seen the light of day in years, perhaps decades. The delivery driver, seeing the exchange, quietly returned to his truck, leaving the man and the dog in the dusty, quiet alley. The immediate danger had passed, but something profound had shifted. One could almost feel the invisible thread of connection forming between them, fragile yet undeniably present. Will this unexpected alliance truly mend two fractured lives, one human, one canine? The alley, once a battlefield of grumbles and broom waving, now held a different kind of silence between Scrappy and Mr. Henderson. It was a quiet born not of indifference, but of a shared, incredible moment. Mr. Henderson, still somewhat pale from his near miss, found himself doing something he hadn't done in years. He truly looked at Scrappy, not as a nuisance, not as a street dog, but as the creature who had, against all odds and logic, saved his life. You could almost see the gears turning in his gruff old head. "Well, I'll be a dog." It was probably the most profound thought he'd had all week, outside of inventory and profit margins. He slowly pulled a handkerchief from his pocket and, to Scrappy's utter surprise, gently wiped away some of the grime from the dog's head. Scrappy, instinctively flinching at first, then leaned into the unexpected touch. It was a unique, emotional moment, this small, tender gesture from a man known only for his stern demeanor. The rough fabric felt strangely comforting. Scrappy had known only fleeting pats, quick, nervous touches from children. This was different, deliberate, almost reverent. He let out a soft sigh, a sound of pure contentment that he hadn't known he possessed. Mr. Henderson, for his part, felt a strange warmth spread through his chest. It wasn't indigestion, he was fairly sure. It was something akin to gratitude, a feeling he rarely indulged in. You little rascal," he mumbled, his voice softer than Scrappy had ever heard it. He even managed a tiny, almost imperceptible smile. He then did something even more out of character. He went inside his shop, not to grab another broom, but to fetch a small, slightly stale biscuit he kept for his afternoon tea. He returned and offered it to Scrappy. The dog took it delicately, a polite nibble rather than his usual ravenous gulp, savoring the taste of this peace offering. From that day forward, the alley behind Henderson's hardware became a place of tentative truce, slowly blossoming into something more. Scrappy no longer had to sneak around. Mr. Henderson began leaving out a small bowl of water and occasionally some leftover scraps from his lunch. Real scraps, not the accidentally dropped kind. He'd still grumble, of course. "Don't get used to it, Mutt. This isn't a 5-star restaurant," he'd huff, as Scrappy devoured a piece of roast beef, tail thumping a silent thank you. But the grumbles had lost their bite, replaced by an underlying gruff affection. It was like watching a thorny bush slowly, reluctantly, produce a single, tiny flower. Scrappy, being the intelligent creature he was, quickly understood the new arrangement. He wouldn't push his luck, still maintaining a respectful distance, but his presence was openly tolerated, even, dare one say, welcomed. He'd often lie near the back door, observing the comings and goings of the hardware store, his keen ears picking up the clanging of tools and the murmur of customer voices. Dogs are highly attuned to human routines and emotional states, which contributes to their strong bonds with people. This keen observation allowed Scrappy to learn Mr. Henderson's rhythms, the times he was busy, the times he was quiet, the times he seemed particularly burdened. One afternoon, Scrappy noticed Mr. Henderson sitting on an overturned bucket in the alley, staring blankly at a pile of damaged lumber. He looked weary, far more so than usual. There was a financial ledger open beside him, and he sighed deeply. Scrappy recognized the scent of stress, a bitter, metallic tang in the air. He remembered the old man's trembling hands after the awning collapsed. Was the hardware store in trouble? Scrappy, without thinking, gently nudged Mr. Henderson's hand with his nose. Mr. Henderson flinched, then looked down. Scrappy whined softly, a low, comforting rumble. "What do you want, Mutt?" Mr. Henderson asked. But there was no anger in his voice, only exhaustion. He reached down and absently scratched behind Scrappy's ears. The dog leaned into the touch, offering silent companionship. It was a subtle yet profound shift in their dynamic, from tolerance to mutual comfort. Could this unusual companionship truly bring unforeseen benefits to both the man and the loyal dog? Life for Scrappy, once a brutal daily struggle, had settled into an almost domestic rhythm. The alley behind Henderson's hardware, once a cold shelter, now felt more like a home. He spent his days in comfortable patches of sun, occasionally chasing a particularly bold pigeon, more for sport than actual hunting, one imagines, and waiting for Mr. Henderson's gruff, yet oddly comforting presence. His fur, though still a mix of scruffy browns and grays, had gained a healthier sheen. His ribs were less prominent, and his eyes, while still holding a knowing streetwise glint, now sparkled with a contentment he had never known. The subtle, sarcastic commentary about the injustices he once faced had faded, replaced by the quiet joy of a full belly and a sense of belonging. It was a remarkable transformation, seeing a creature so accustomed to hardship soften under the gentle hand of kindness. Mr. Henderson, too, was undergoing a subtle shift. He still grumbled, of course, about rising supply costs and the general ineptitude of modern society, but the edges of his perpetual frown seemed a little less sharp. He found himself talking to Scrappy, murmuring observations about the weather or complaining about a difficult customer. Scrappy, with his head cocked and ears perked, was an excellent listener, never interrupting, always seeming to understand. These were the moments of quiet companionship, a unique emotional moment for both of them. One afternoon, a young boy named Leo, perhaps 7 or 8 years old, wandered into the alley, chasing a runaway ball. He spotted Scrappy curled by the back door, and his eyes lit up. "Look, Dad, a dog!" he exclaimed, pointing. His father, Mr. Davis, a stern-faced businessman who owned the much newer, shinier Davis Developments office building across the street, quickly pulled him back. "Come along, Leo. Don't touch stray animals." Mr. Henderson, overhearing, simply narrowed his eyes, a silent warning to Mr. Davis. Scrappy watched them go, sensing the subtle disapproval in Mr. Davis's voice. He knew the type, all about progress, efficiency, and cleanliness, even if it meant tearing down the old to build the new. Mr. Henderson had muttered about fancy folk with no respect for history more than once. There was a buzz around town about some big redevelopment plans. Old Mr. Henderson, with his antiquated hardware store and his now resident scruffy mutt, seemed like an obstacle to progress in the eyes of some. Dogs are acutely sensitive to human body language and tone of voice, allowing them to quickly interpret intentions and emotional states, even when words are not explicitly understood. Scrappy could feel the tension, the underlying current of change that swirled around the alley, even if he didn't fully comprehend the details. It was a faint, unsettling hum beneath the city's usual symphony. One evening, as Mr. Henderson was locking up, a strange car, sleek and dark, pulled slowly down the alley. Two men in expensive suits, looking entirely out of place amidst the dumpsters and old bricks, emerged. They approached Mr. Henderson, holding clipboards and flashing confident, almost predatory smiles. Scrappy, hidden in the shadows, watched. He heard snippets of their conversation. Prime location, modernization, generous offer. Mr. Henderson's face, already tired, seemed to sag further. He shook his head, his voice low and firm. This store has been in my family for 3 generations. It's not for sale. The men persisted, their voices smooth and insistent. Scrappy could practically feel the greasy charm emanating from them. Seriously, guys, take a hint, he might have thought, a low growl rumbling in his chest. The men eventually left, their smiles hardening into thinly veiled annoyance. Mr. Henderson stood there for a long moment, staring at the spot where their car had been, a weary sigh escaping his lips. He looked down at Scrappy, who had emerged from the shadows. They want the building, boy, he mumbled, rubbing the bridge of his nose. Want to tear it all down. Build some glass monstrosity. Scrappy whined softly, leaning against Mr. Henderson's leg. He sensed the old man's distress, a deep, bone-weary sadness that smelled of fear and resignation. The thought of losing this haven, this newfound warmth, sent a shiver through Scrappy. He remembered the cold, the hunger, the constant threat of the streets. He didn't want to go back to that. The visits from the developers became more frequent, their offers growing, their smiles more fixed. Mr. Henderson grew increasingly stressed, his grumbles more frequent and less humorous. He'd pace the aisles, his shoulders slumped, the scent of worry clinging to him like dust. The subtle, sarcastic humor was now directed at the relentless nature of progress. They don't know when to quit, do they, boy? Like a persistent flea on a summer dog. Scrappy would tilt his head, a silent acknowledgement of the shared predicament. The thought lingered. Could this small, unlikely family withstand the relentless tide of urban development? Will this fragile bond be strong enough to overcome the looming threats to their sanctuary? The tension in the alley was palpable, a low hum beneath the usual city sounds, like a distant, rumbling storm. Scrappy felt it keenly. The scent of stress from Mr. Henderson grew stronger with each passing day, a bitter tang mixed with the familiar smell of old wood and worn metal from the hardware store. The developers, unrelenting, continued their subtle assault, their sleek cars idling ominously in the alley, their crisp suits a stark contrast to the dust and grime of the old neighborhood. It felt like a siege, slowly tightening its grip. Scrappy would often sit near Mr. Henderson's feet, a silent, comforting presence, offering the quiet solace only a loyal dog can provide. He knew the feeling of being unwanted, of facing relentless pressure, and he silently offered his steadfast companionship. This was a unique, emotional moment, the quiet understanding passing between man and dog. A wordless pact against the encroaching forces of change. One particularly dark and blustery night, a storm rolled in, unleashing a torrent of rain that turned the alley into a slick, reflective river. The wind howled through the gaps in the buildings, rattling loose panes in Mr. Henderson's old windows. The hardware store was closed, a single dim light casting long, dancing shadows through the shelves of tools and nails. Mr. Henderson, usually asleep by now, paced restlessly within, his footsteps echoing in the empty space. He was a creature of habit, and this disruption, this uncertainty about his store's future, was gnawing at him. He worried about the legacy of his family, the generations of Hendersons who had built this place. Scrappy, tucked away in his favorite spot behind a stack of old tires, was usually a sound sleeper during storms. The drumming rain often lulled him into a deep slumber. But tonight was different. A strange, unfamiliar scent began to permeate the air, subtle at first, then growing stronger, sharper. It wasn't the usual smells of rain or damp concrete. It was something acrid, metallic, something wrong. Dogs possess an olfactory sense that is exponentially more powerful than a human's, allowing them to detect minute traces of chemicals and substances, often picking up scents in parts per trillion. Scrappy's nose twitched, his ears perked. He lifted his head, a low growl rumbling in his chest. He heard another sound then, muffled by the storm, but distinct, a faint, metallic scraping, followed by the soft clink of metal against concrete. It was coming from the back of the store, near the old, seldom-used side entrance that led to the small, dusty office. Scrappy knew that door. It was old, prone to sticking, but usually secured with a heavy bolt. He tried to dismiss it as the wind playing tricks, but the strange scent grew more potent, and the scraping sound repeated. His instincts screamed. This wasn't natural. This wasn't the storm. He crept out from his shelter, his paws making almost no sound on the wet pavement. He moved like a shadow, low to the ground, every muscle taut with alert. He rounded a stack of empty crates and saw them, two figures, cloaked in dark rain gear, hunched over the side door. They were using some sort of tool, a long, slender piece of metal to jimmy the lock. Scrappy's heart hammered against his ribs. Burglars. In this weather? How audacious. Honestly, couldn't they pick a drier night? My paws are getting soaked, he might have grumbled to himself. He considered barking, a loud, attention-grabbing bark, but something held him back. He remembered Mr. Henderson's distress, the vulnerability he'd sensed from the old man. A simple bark might scare them off, but it wouldn't solve the underlying problem, the feeling of insecurity. And what if they hurt Mr. Henderson? Scrappy, despite his small size, felt a surge of protectiveness. He was, after all, the unofficial guardian of this alley, and by extension, this grumpy old man. He watched, silent, as one of the figures finally managed to get the lock to click. The door creaked open, revealing a sliver of darkness inside. The two men slipped in, their forms swallowed by the gloom. Scrappy waited for a beat, processing. He then turned and bolted, not into the store, but towards the front of the hardware store, where Mr. Henderson's bedroom window was. He jumped, scrabbling at the sill, letting out a series of urgent, insistent barks, the kind that demanded immediate attention. He needed to wake Mr. Henderson, to make him understand the unseen danger lurking in the heart of his beloved store. The rain lashed down, the wind howled, but Scrappy's barks were a clear, sharp alarm in the stormy night. Would his desperate cries reach Mr. Henderson in time, or would the fortune the old man unknowingly held be lost forever? Mr. Henderson, usually a heavy sleeper, stirred uneasily. The relentless drumming of rain against his window pane was familiar, but something else, something sharper, was cutting through the storm's cacophony. It was Scrappy's bark, insistent and high-pitched, unlike his usual playful yaps or warning growls. He barked not from inside the house, but from right outside his bedroom window, an unusual spot for the streetwise dog. Mr. Henderson sat up, rubbing the sleep from his eyes. He heard the scrabbling at the glass, a frantic sound that spoke of urgency. "Confound it, Scrappy! What's all the fuss about?" he mumbled, swinging his legs out of bed. He felt a flicker of annoyance, but it was quickly overshadowed by a gnawing sense of unease. He'd learned to trust Scrappy's instincts, especially after the awning incident. He pulled on his old bathrobe, its flannel soft against his skin, and shuffled to the window. Peering out into the rain-streaked darkness, he saw Scrappy, a small, dark silhouette, scrambling on the narrow ledge beneath the window, barking furiously up at him. The dog's tail was tucked low, his body tense, a clear sign of genuine alarm. This was a unique, emotional moment, seeing the normally stoic Mr. Henderson respond to the frantic pleas of a dog he had once considered nothing more than a pest. He knew, deep down, that something was truly amiss. Flipping on the outdoor light, Mr. Henderson quickly scanned the alley. Nothing seemed immediately out of place, but the storm was raging, obscuring much of the view. He knew Scrappy wouldn't make such a racket for no reason. All right, I'm coming," he muttered, pulling on a pair of old work boots. He made his way downstairs, the old floorboards groaning beneath his weight. As he fumbled with the locks on the back door, Scrappy was already there, whining and nudging at his legs. The moment the door opened, Scrappy didn't dart out. Instead, he darted in, then looked back at Mr. Henderson, letting out a short, urgent bark, then trotted purposefully towards the office area. Mr. Henderson followed, a heavy wrench now clutched in his hand, his heart beginning to pound with a mixture of fear and adrenaline. The air inside the store felt colder, a draft he hadn't noticed before. He saw the side office door, usually bolted, standing slightly ajar. A sliver of light, not from inside, but from a small flashlight, flickered within. He heard hushed voices, the muffled sound of rummaging. His blood ran cold. Burglars, in his store. "Well, I'll be," he whispered, anger replacing fear. "They really picked the wrong night." One might commend their audacity, if not their intelligence. Scrappy, sensing Mr. Henderson's realization, moved ahead, slipping silently into the office. He didn't charge in. He moved with the stealth of a seasoned hunter. Inside, two figures were indeed rummaging through Mr. Henderson's old metal safe, the door of which stood ajar. One man was shining a flashlight, while the other, a tall, lanky fellow, was pulling out stacks of what looked like old documents. They were so focused on their task, on the dusty contents of the safe, that they didn't hear Mr. Henderson approach, nor did they initially notice the small, furry shadow that had entered the room. Dogs have an exceptional sense of hearing, not just for volume, but also for directionality, allowing them to pinpoint sounds with remarkable accuracy, often detecting quiet movements humans would miss. Scrappy, moving with silent determination, saw the lanky burglar's foot resting precariously close to a stack of loose, metal pipes Mr. Henderson kept by the wall. With a swift, almost imperceptible movement, Scrappy nudged the bottom pipe with his nose. The entire stack, with a deafening clang and rattle, crashed to the floor, echoing loudly in the enclosed space. The burglars jumped, startled. The man with the flashlight dropped it, plunging the room into near darkness. The lanky one yelped, stumbling back against the wall, tripping over the scattered pipes. In the ensuing chaos, Mr. Henderson, seizing the moment, bellowed, "What in tarnation are you doing in my store?" His voice, usually a grumble, boomed with righteous fury. The burglars, disoriented and panicked, scrambled for the open door, tripping over each other in their haste. Scrappy, ever the tactical genius, darted between their legs, causing them to stumble further, giving Mr. Henderson precious seconds to react. As they crashed out of the office and into the main store, Mr. Henderson quickly slammed the office door shut and locked it from the outside, trapping them within his store. "Gotcha, you blackguards!" he yelled, a triumphant, if slightly shaky, grin spreading across his face. He quickly fumbled for his phone to call the police, Scrappy sitting calmly at his feet, tail wagging. A true hero in the stormy night. The wail of police sirens, cutting through the receding storm, was music to Mr. Henderson's ears. He stood by the main entrance of his hardware store, Scrappy patiently sitting beside him, both watching as two patrol cars pulled up, their flashing lights painting the wet street in hues of red and blue. Officers quickly entered the store, guided by Mr. Henderson's trembling finger pointing towards the back office. It wasn't long before muffled shouts and the clanging of metal indicated the burglars had been apprehended. One might imagine Mr. Henderson muttering, "Took 'em long enough, didn't they, boy?" as he watched the scene unfold. The police officers, led by a no-nonsense Sergeant Miller, emerged with the two disheveled burglars in handcuffs. They were the same two well-dressed men who had been persistently trying to buy out Mr. Henderson's property. Their expensive suits were now torn, covered in dust and grime from their escapade and their unfortunate encounter with a stack of pipes. Their smug smiles were long gone, replaced by expressions of sheer frustration and anger. "Well, well, if it isn't the developers," Mr. Henderson couldn't help but quip, a rare flash of triumphant sarcasm in his voice. Sergeant Miller, a keen observer, immediately picked up on the animosity. As the officers began their report, taking down Mr. Henderson's statement, the story of Scrappy's heroic intervention began to emerge. Mr. Henderson, with a gruff but undeniable pride, recounted how the scrappy mutt had awakened him, led him to the danger, and even helped disorient the burglars. One of the officers, a young woman named Officer Thompson, knelt down to eye level with Scrappy, gently scratching behind his ears. "So, this little guy saved the day, huh?" she murmured, her voice warm. Scrappy responded with a soft whine and a happy thump of his tail against the floor. Dogs have an inherent ability to interpret human intentions and emotions through tone of voice and body language, leading them to respond positively to genuine affection. It was a unique, emotional moment, seeing this hardened police officer melt slightly at the sight of the scruffy hero. Word travels fast in a small city, especially news of a dramatic foiled burglary and an unlikely canine hero. By morning, despite the lingering drizzle, a small crowd had gathered outside Henderson's hardware. News reporters, their cameras flashing, clamored for details. The story of Scrappy, the hero dog of Henderson's alley, spread like wildfire. Local news channels ran segments featuring grainy footage of the store and interviews with a surprisingly eloquent Mr. Henderson, who, for the first time in memory, was smiling openly. He spoke not just of the thwarted robbery, but of Scrappy's loyalty, his intelligence, and how the dog had transformed his own life. "He's not just a dog," Mr. Henderson declared, his voice gruff with emotion. "He's family." The public's reaction was astonishing. People, charmed by the rags-to-riches tale of a street dog turned hero, flocked to the hardware store. They didn't just come to gawp, they came to support Mr. Henderson and his courageous companion. Business, which had been flagging, suddenly boomed. Customers bought everything from nails to garden hoses, many simply stopping by to offer a pat to Scrappy, who sat proudly by the door, enjoying his newfound celebrity. Children brought him treats and toys, and a local pet store even offered him a lifetime supply of premium dog food. Scrappy, once an anonymous shadow, was now a beloved local legend. "Who knew a few pipes and a good bark could be such a career booster?" he might have mused, happily chewing on a new squeaky toy. As for the developers, it turned out their desperate act was born of financial desperation. They weren't legitimate developers at all, but con artists who had squandered their investors' money and were trying to steal anything valuable they could find, hoping to sell it off to cover their debts. The fortune they were trying to save was their own skin, and the documents in the safe were actually old, extremely valuable blueprints and property deeds belonging to Mr. Henderson's family, dating back generations. These historical documents, carefully preserved, proved to be far more valuable than any money they might have carried in the safe. They represented the true wealth of the Henderson legacy. something the con artists hadn't realized. Their foolish attempt to steal led to their downfall, and unknowingly highlighted the true, hidden value of Mr. Henderson's family business. The incident brought unprecedented attention to Henderson's hardware, not just for its heroic dog, but for its rich history and the integrity of its owner. The community rallied around Mr. Henderson, offering support, not just financial, but emotional. It was clear that the old hardware store, a symbol of resilience and tradition, was going nowhere. And Scrappy, the once scrappy mutt, was at the heart of it all. This transformation, from a forgotten stray to a celebrated hero, proved that kindness truly does prevail, and that even the smallest beings can possess the greatest impact. Will the newfound fame and fortune change the simple life Scrappy and Mr. Henderson have built together? Or will their bond remain as strong as ever? As the days that followed the foiled robbery were a whirlwind, unlike anything Mr. Henderson or Scrappy had ever experienced. The hardware store, once a quiet, dusty corner of the city, became a focal point. People didn't just come to buy tools, they came to see Scrappy, to offer him a gentle pat, to hear Mr. Henderson's now legendary tale of the scrappy mutt who saved his fortune. The term fortune had taken on a double meaning. While the burglars had been after the family's valuable historical documents, the true fortune was the sudden influx of business and goodwill. It was a unique emotional moment for Mr. Henderson, seeing his life's work and Scrappy's selfless act receive such an outpouring of appreciation. He found himself smiling more often, a genuine, crinkly-eyed smile that reached his rarely seen dimples. Scrappy, for his part, handled his celebrity with a dignified calm. He greeted visitors with a polite wag of his tail, accepting treats and belly rubs with practiced ease. He even had a new plush dog bed in the corner of the office, though he still preferred to nap on the worn welcome mat by the front door, keeping a watchful eye on his beloved Mr. Henderson. He had his own fan club, particularly among the neighborhood children, who would bring him drawings and small, handmade toys. He often heard them whispering, "That's Scrappy, the hero dog." It was a far cry from his days of dodging kicks and scrounging for scraps. He was, as they say, living the dream. All this for just bumping a guy with my head and causing a minor avalanche of pipes, he might have thought with a satisfied sigh. The ripple effect of Scrappy's story extended far beyond the hardware store. Inspired by the tale of resilience and loyalty, the local animal shelter saw a significant increase in adoptions. People were reminded that every stray, every abandoned animal, held the potential for incredible loyalty and companionship. Donations poured in, and even Mr. Davis, the stern businessman from across the street, who had initially dismissed Scrappy as a stray animal, made a sizable contribution to the shelter, privately admitting to Mr. Henderson that Scrappy's story had changed his perspective. Dogs, with their capacity for unconditional love and forgiveness, often inspire profound changes in human behavior and empathy. This collective shift in perspective was a testament to the powerful, positive influence animals can have on a community. Mr. Henderson, feeling a renewed vigor, decided to use his newfound attention for good. He partnered with the local historical society to properly catalog and preserve his family's invaluable blueprints and deeds, turning them into a small, fascinating exhibit within the hardware store itself. He even started offering tours, sharing stories of the building's history and, of course, Scrappy's heroic moment. The old store, once a symbol of aging neglect, became a vibrant hub, a testament to the power of community, history, and a very special dog. The rags to riches narrative wasn't just Scrappy's, it was Mr. Henderson's too. His business thrived, his spirits lifted, and he found a deep companionship he never expected. He often caught himself looking at Scrappy, curled peacefully by his feet, and a profound sense of gratitude would wash over him. "Who knew?" he'd murmur, gently scratching behind Scrappy's ears. "That all it took was a scruffy mutt to save an old man like me?" It was a moment of quiet, deep reflection. Scrappy would respond with a soft lick to his hand, a silent affirmation of their bond. Their life together settled into a comfortable, happy routine. Scrappy, once an animal driven by pure survival, now lived a life of purpose and love. Mr. Henderson, once a solitary, gruff shopkeeper, now had a loyal companion and a revitalized connection with his community. The old alley, bathed in the gentle glow of the hardware store's lights, no longer felt shadowed by past hardships or future threats. It felt like home, a testament to the enduring power of kindness, loyalty, and the unexpected miracles that can happen when one opens their heart, even just a little. Will the story of Scrappy and Mr. Henderson continue to inspire generations to come, reminding everyone of the hidden heroes in our midst? The city hums softly outside, a distant lullaby, but here, inside, all is peace. Scrappy lies curled by the crackling fireplace in Mr. Henderson's cozy living room, a soft, contented sigh escaping his lips. His fur, clean and well-fed, rises and falls with each gentle breath. The faint scent of wood smoke and old books fills the air, a world away from the harsh concrete and forgotten food of his past. He dreams, perhaps, of sunbeams and gentle hands, of the satisfying crunch of a well-earned biscuit. Mr. Henderson sits nearby, reading, his spectacles perched low on his nose, a rare, soft smile playing on his lips as he glances at his sleeping companion. All is quiet, all is well. The little Scrappy mutt, once lost and alone, has truly found his forever, a hero in the most gentle and profound sense.